How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be talking about Blade Runner Black Lotus Season 1. This is the new animated series that came out on Adult Swim and Crunchyroll. This originally aired from November 2021 to February 2022, and every single episode was directed by series creators Kenji Kamiyama and Shinji Aramaki. This series stars Jessica Henwick, Wiley, and Samira Wiley as our leads. And overall, I guess I should open up with saying I really love the original Blade Runner film. It's one of those films that every time I watch it, I get a little more out of it and I like it a little more. And rewatchability, definitely a good sign for a great movie, you know? So, I really like the first Blade Runner, and in turn, every little chance to go back into this world, I really loved revisiting this world and getting new stories out of it. I really like the sequel. There's a spin-off film called Soldier with Kurt Russell that doesn't really advertise that it's in the same world, but it is. I like that one as well. And I've also read a lot of the new comics that just recently came out from Titan Comics. So I'm always up for going back into the Blade Runner world. And comics is where I first saw an ad for the show. They print a lot of the ads were printed in DC Comics, and I saw, you know, the image there, Elle with her sword, Blade Runner Black Lotus animated series coming to Adult Swim. And I was really excited. I really love Blade Runner, and I really love animation. So to see the two coming together, I was really excited for it. And I didn't find out about the controversy till a long time later, when I decided to look up the trailer. And yeah, when I saw the pictures moving as opposed to the still print ad, I kind of got what people were saying. And a lot of people really criticized this show before it came out, and they did have valid reasons. You know, the show was 3D instead of 2D. The show had much more of a pop aesthetic. You know, the music in the show, much more like dance music, which, you know, much more pop than we're used to getting out of Blade Runner, and also much more action heavy. So it really did feel like a different take on this world, and I get where the critiques were coming from. But that being said, and I know some people will hate me for saying this, I definitely think you should give the show a chance. It's one of those shows, I have individual episode reviews for every single episode of this season, and you can see me being a lot more critical back in episode 1, but by the time you get to the ending of this series, I was really enjoying it. It really does grow on you. Now that being said, it definitely has flaws. And I think a lot of people already know them, so we'll get through them kind of quick. Obviously, this is 3D animation instead of 2D. I obviously would have preferred 2D. 2D is so much cooler. But that being said, the people definitely do have that kind of plasticky feel behind them. And a lot of people point out their Lego hair that doesn't move as much as it should. But that being said, with the people, they did do a lot of motion capture. So even though they look plasticky, they do move pretty realistically. And it doesn't get enough credit that even though the people don't look the best, the backgrounds are really well made in the show. CG is really good at rendering hard, flat objects. So you can really build a really cool city. And you shine those neon lights. Like, the world is good. The people are kind of plasticky, but you get used to it. But all the world and the gadgets and the cool Blade Runner aesthetic, that is there. Now, that being said, there's a few other flaws. Every now and then you'll get a line that doesn't come off the best, so there's a few weird lines in here. And there's also a few plot twists that are pretty obvious to see coming. There's a character, Joseph, and he has a dark, mysterious past, and I think we can all figure out what he used to do for a living well before it tells us. There's also a hooded figure that Elle remembers, and it keeps it a mystery for a long time who this hooded figure is. But most people figured it out after a few episodes. So yeah, there is some flaws, and it is a very different feel. Again, much more pop, much more energy, but it really does grow on you. The action isn't normally a Blade Runner thing, but they do it really well here, you know? So it's different, and I get that, and there are definite flaws, and I get that. But that being said, I would recommend giving the show a few episodes. It does grow on you, and you really do start to understand and feel for the characters. And even though it's different, it's pretty well done, you know, in the things it does differently. And another thing about the show that I don't think enough people are talking about, it's a Toonami show. Toonami was where a lot of people were first introduced to anime back in the 90s. And when you talk about anime, and you talk about Blade Runner, you really do have to talk about the impact Blade Runner had. Blade Runner may have had a bigger impact in Japan than it did in the States, and you can really see the impact of Blade Runner into science fiction anime. Everything from Ghost in the Shell to Bubblegum Crisis. Blade Runner had such a big impact, and now to see Blade Runner as an animated show airing on Toonami, where most people were exposed to its impact, it's a really cool way of coming back home, you know? An official Blade Runner anime on Toonami. That's pretty cool. Now, yeah, it does have flaws, but I'd say give it a chance. Without further ado, let's go ahead and talk a bit about the plot. I'm not going to be doing any major spoilers, but I do want to say my piece on a few plot points and make sure you guys have a basic understanding as to what the episode's about. We open up with our lead character, Elle. She wakes up in the back of a box truck with no memory, so yeah, this is an amnesia plot. Don't worry, they don't stick on it too long. I was really worried they were going to fall into the tropes, but they use it as setup and then they move on. So she has amnesia, she doesn't remember how she got there, but she has two things. One, she has a data pad that she needs someone to open up for her. She can't figure out how to do it herself. And two, she has the memory of an address, a place in Los Angeles that she knows is home. So she has to go home. She goes to the city and it's the dark, creepy Blade Runner city. There's a line here I really love where she says, "It's the middle of the day, but there's so much smog and grime that it looks like night." I really do love that detail. But the whole city's much more run down and decrepit than she remembers it. And she goes to this address and she meets Doc Badger. He owns the shop on the ground floor. It's a pawn shop with lots of cool, interesting things that may help her out later. And when she shows Doc Badger the data pad, he says, "There's a guy on one of the apartments above us who's my friend and I think he can help us out." And that's Joseph, who they sometimes call Jay. And he's this guy, he's dark and mopey with a mysterious past. And I think we can all figure out what he used to do for a living, but that's beside the point. So he's there, and he's dark and sad, and they say, "Hey, look, you need to help out Elle and open up this data pad." So he does that, and Elle finds out about her past, who she is, and what happened to her and several of her friends, and it's this big tragedy that I won't spoil for you. But once Elle finds out her past, she has a list of people that have wronged her, and it kind of turns into a Kill Bill style show for a while, where Elle goes to all the different people that wronged her and goes to get her revenge, you know, so scratching off people on that list, and it leads to some pretty fun action sequences. And ultimately, Elle has to find out who was really behind all this and has to take out some significantly larger targets. And let's go ahead and talk about specifics. I'm not going to spoil much more of the show than that. But talking about specifics, the first thing we have to talk about is Elle. And Elle's one of those elements from the show that is definitely on the more different side. And the first time you see her, it's a little jarring. Elle is an optimist. Elle is a happy person. And it's kind of weird, because Blade Runner, the world is so dark and depressing, and it's super weird to see Elle. She has on shorts, she has on tennis shoes, and she looks much more like she would be at home in an American shopping mall than in the world of Blade Runner. But I assure you, there is a good reason for this, and you find out why Elle is so different from everybody else. A good example of her character is they give her the Voight-Kampff eye test, you know, to tell if you're a replicant or not. And one of the questions they ask Elle is, you're walking down a street and you see a real-life, non-replicant cat. What do you do? And her answer is, I pick it up and I take it home with me. Why? Because kittens are cute and fluffy. So yeah, Elle's the kind of person that during the Voight-Kampff test, she talks about how she loves kittens because they're cute and fluffy. It's very different, and I assure you, you find out why Elle is like this. And at first it's kind of jarring, but over time watching the series and seeing just how bad the world is, but how good Elle is, she starts to become like the only light of hope in such a dark and depressing world, and you really start to get behind her, like, oh man, I hope Elle's okay? So it is one of those things that, you know, is at first different, but really does grow on you. And when the season's over, you're like, I hope Elle comes back. I hope we get season 2. So yeah, one of the things that at first is different, but it will grow on you, trust me. Another thing that's different is action. The first Blade Runner movie did have action, but it had more of a point to it, like that chase scene where Deckard kills a replicant, but it's really more about the horror of what he just did, or the big fight scene with Batty at the end really more is about the emotional drive at the end than the fight itself. So yeah, action, not necessarily the most Blade Runner thing to do, but that being said, it does it really well. They do motion capture for the movements of the characters, and in turn, they have to choreograph a real fight scene. People move how they really do, and the fights have proper weight behind them. The last 2 episodes of the series, I won't spoil the specifics, but the last 2 episodes are big, back-to-back fight scenes that go on for a really long time. One scene that has a really good brawling element to it that goes throughout this whole big location, that's really cool. And then the show ends with a pretty fun sword fight. So yeah, action is a little different, but I really did like it, and they did it really well. And although we talk about differences, there's a lot of callbacks to Blade Runner. Like I said, the city is very much the same. We do get the Voight-Kampff eye test to see if you're a replicant. We do get the Esper scanner, which you can take a photo and enhance the image, you know, enhance one of the memorable scenes of the first movie. Tons of spinners everywhere. And in this show, we actually see what I think is the first appearance of a spinner motorbike, which is pretty fun as well. So yeah, lots of things from the first movie. And there are little things too, like they go back to the old Tyrell building from the first movie. And we also get to see Joseph's apartment looks a whole lot like Deckard's, implying they probably live in the same building, which is pretty interesting. And we also get a few callbacks to Blade Runner 2049 and how this show kind of sets that up. Biggest example, Jared Leto's character, Nyander Wallace, is in this show, and you get to see a younger version of him, hatching this crazy plan, and you get to see him kind of becoming who will be in the movie later. And also, a thing this series does pretty well is it features a Blade Runner as an enemy, as an antagonist the whole time. And usually Blade Runners are our point of view, but this time he's an enemy, and you really get to see how scary it would be to be hunted down by a Blade Runner. It's like being hunted down by the Terminator. And the Blade Runner in this show, Marlowe, it's pretty cool. Whenever he shows up, you know that something's about to go down, and that's really, really fun. So yeah, this show isn't as deep or philosophical as Ridley Scott's masterpiece, and I feel it should go without saying, it's nowhere near as good as the first movie. And yeah, it's kind of a little bit more on the, hey, let's just have fun side. Pop, dance music. L's much more of an optimist and, hey, let's have some fun action. But that being said, I know it's a little jarring at first, but I encourage you just to give it a few episodes. It's 13 episodes long, but they're only half-hour blocks, so it's not too terribly long. Just give it a few episodes, and I think it will probably grow on you. The series has developed its cult fans, and I see the reason for that. So, yes, it has faults. I wish it was 2D as well, and it's not as good as the first movie, but it's still, it's fun. And I just want to say that. It's a pretty fun show, you know? So, see if it grows on you like it did me. I would encourage you to give this a chance, although that being said, maybe it's not for everybody, but I really did like it. And, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my Blade Runner playlist. I've reviewed the first movie. I've reviewed Kurt Russell and Soldier. I've reviewed a lot of the comics, but I've also done an individual episode review for every episode of this season, so there are 13 of those videos as well. So if you want to see me talk more about Blade Runner, you can click there and see more. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Blade Runner playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.